She is a Sudanese human rights defender from Darfur. She is a Darfur genocide survivor for the last 14 years. She is a leading advocate for women's rights, peace, justice, and the end of genocide in Darfur. She was born and raised in Darfur and graduated with a BA in English from Al Fashe University. In 2003, she left with her extended family and was forced to leave her village after it was completely destroyed and she became a refugee. She has worked for years for the International Humanitarian and Human Rights Organization, IRC and UNDP. I have no idea what those are. She was kidnapped, twice arrested, and imprisoned several times. She was tortured and humiliated while in prison and sentenced to death by Sudanese regime. She has received the International Woman of Courage Award from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and First Lady Michelle Obama for being one of the leading women human rights persons in the world. She has been given the award for the support of women in helping in humanitarian crises by Soroptimist International Women for Women in 2003. She was granted political asylum in this country in 2013, and she continues her advocacy for peace and justice for the people of Darfur in Sudan. She currently works as a legal records clerk at a law firm in Philadelphia. So, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
This is very informal, you know, and you're liable to be interrupted with questions.
Okay. It's okay, yeah. Thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you, everyone. And I really very appreciate to be part of you first. And also thank you for invitation to speak to you today. And as we all believe that the human rights is a global issue, and justice and peace.
Could you talk a little bit louder? Because I can't even hear you.
Oh, yeah. And as we all believe the human rights and the justice and peace is a global issue to everyone, all of us. And my story is just one of the millions of women and children and adults story globally and in Sudan particular. In 2013, like 2003, the government of Sudan trained kind of militia called Janjaweed. So that's kind of militia, Janjaweed is Arab militia. It's being trained to engage systematically to kill the African people. And when the government trained this kind of militia, they came to our village, and one of my villages being thousands of villages being destroyed in Darfur, just in 2003, including my village. I lost 100 of my family, and we forced to become as a refugee. And you may know that over 400,000 civilians being killed systematically and ethnically. And it was so horrible. And thousands of villages being destroyed. That's been internationally, and especially the UN Security Council and United Nations, and especially the US government also, in 2004, recognized it as genocide. And all the victims of genocide, over 3 million, being refugees, some inside the country, that's called the internal displacement people, and the refugees, the people who forced to cross the border to Chad and Central Africa and Ethiopia and Eritrea and all our neighbors country people being displaced. You may also know the history of Sudan over decades. The generation never saw the peace. So you may hear about South Sudan situation over the last 25 years. The same Islamic fundamental government who still kill the people in Darfur and Blue Nile and Nuba is the same government that's been killed the over 1,000 people who've been Christian in South Sudan, and the same government who forced the South Sudan to independent, to become their own country after being the one country in Sudan. So unfortunately, the history in Sudan is full of killing, full of rape, full of crisis. Unfortunately, the government of Sudan, after it's not just the genocide that's been happened and over 400,000 being killed systematically in Darfur, also use the rape of the women as the tools to destroy the whole communities. So thousands of women being raped to shame whole community, to shame all men. That's where destroy whole your community. Unfortunately, for last 10 years, al-Bashir, who is the dictator, Sudanese regime in coming power in 1998 by military coup, is still the same government who today, the last 27 years, is still the same person, is still the same regime, is still the same system that's committing the crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, crimes of war. Unfortunately, the same government, after the UN Security Council and United Nations recognized it in 2004, what's happened in Darfur is a genocide. And last 13 years, unfortunately, the same genocide is still happening until today. So women continue rape as the tools of the destroyed community. The men is still killing. And the government of Sudan, those kind of militias, they occupy the indigenous people land. The time indigenous people forced to become as refugees, as a million, they're still in the refugees for the last 14 years. So my family today, they're still 14 years in the refugees. There is no peace, there is no justice. And unfortunately, in 2009, when the international community court sent the message of the indicted al-Bashir, who Sudanese president, to be arrested by International Criminal Court. So the government of Sudan expelled all the humanitarian organizations. So, and then the starvation became the second phase. The people being died because of no food, because of no medical care, because of no medical assistance. So, and the same situation, unfortunately, is still happening until today. For last year, October, I think the Amnesty International is one of the organizations that's working the human rights issue in Sudan so much. So Amnesty International and the Human Rights Watch, they documented about 200 women being raped, misraped as a group for 3 days by the Sudanese militia in the village.
When was that?
That's last year, October.
Just last year?
Last year. So in the same time as also this year, it was from January until March. So the government of Sudan used the chemical weapons against 4 people. 4 people is, the Darfur is the name of Darfur. So 4, yeah, F-U-R. F-U-R is like you have here the indigenous nation. So the 4 people as indigenous of Darfur. So being ruled Darfur as the Sultan and the kingdom. And then that's before the UK colonial Sudan. So, and after Darfur being colonial, and then Darfur joined Sudan now. So since that time, the people continue to suffer, the people as the indigenous and especially black people. And the government of Sudan is not stop just in Darfur. It's also keep moving to Nuba Mount and Blue Nile and South Kordofan. Those also, they marginalize those people, and because they're black people also. And at the same time, it's because they're indigenous people. It's being marginalized and also being continuing to use the food as kind of weapon to the people to being killed more. And for last 5 years, the government of Sudan is not allowed even the humanitarian organization, the humanitarian aid to go to Sudan at all. So today people now are facing, the government of Sudan is still bombed the village. The government of Sudan is still killed civilians. The government of Sudan is still rape women. In the same time, there is no human rights organization and there is no humanitarian organization, at least to document it, what's happened. That's why I've been one of the activists who've been working very much with the IDPs in the ground, with the people in the refugee camps. So the government of Sudan targets those people, so the international community and the world should never know what's happening in Sudan, since there is no one to document it, what's happening. I used to document it for last many years, about the violence against women, about the rape that's been rape women and the people being killed and the village being destroyed systematically. And that's why one of the consequences of how it's danger to be a human rights activist in the environment that they not believe in the human rights. And especially in the Sudan, the country, like the Islamic country especially, it's very hard to believe the human rights and very hard to believe the women to speak up. So that's I put my life to speak up and believe that justice and peace and the freedoms is such expensive value of human being. So we should pay the price. So I paid a price, my family paid a price, and that's what I'm saying in the beginning, my story is just one of the million people's story. So how it's hard to be an activist in Sudan. That's why the government of Sudan is still also target the activists, the political activists continue also to be targeted, to be arrested, and the Christian in Sudan continue to be persecuted systematically, and the church destroyed systematically, and the government of Sudan is forced to everything to be Muslim and everything to be Arab. Otherwise, so killing and arrested and raped. And that is their mission, and use the Islam as a tools to interact, and it's not just to interact, to use them to commit the crimes. So use the religious to commit the crimes, use the religious to abuse the others' rights, and to deny other people's rights. So that's sometimes it's very hard to understand the situation in Sudan, and but now Sudan being neglected in the media because the government of Sudan forced all activists to flee Sudan and forced the human rights group to flee Sudan by force, and putting very restrict there because there is no freedom of speech. So the freedom of speech has become very, very complicated in Sudan. So if you want to be the freedom activist, you always target by the government of Sudan. So that's very hard, the situation in Sudan. And for last 10 years, we just endorsed this situation and paid a price. And I've been arrested like 3 times, and I've been kidnapped 2 times. And the last time was very hard. No one believed I'm alive. I could survive at all. So, but because of you do something and make difference to many people's life, even sometimes you can't imagine how the simple work you do here, like writing letters and speak up and protest it, how it change other people's life. So the people in the United States here have been arrested for several times, and the last time I've been sentenced to death in the media. In the same time as I was working with the UN, and UN failed to protect one of their staff. So because the mandate of the UN, there is a peacekeeper mission in Darfur, but that peacekeeper mission mandate is very weak, can't able to protect themselves. So it'd be very difficult to protect civilians or the other million who really need to be protected. So, and because of my case, it became the top of everybody's case. So many people being lobbied my case, including the people in the United States here, the people in the Pittsburgh, start write letters to the Senate, and 7 Congress in the Pennsylvania being write letters for my release to UN Security Council member and the UN, including that time the US representative in the UN Security Council. And that time, Hillary Clinton was the former Secretary of State. She being also one who wrote the letters for my release. Many people, including the Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International people, they spoke up everywhere about my release. So I've been lucky to be released. And after I've been released, it's been very difficult. The government of Sudan is refused to give me any document so you could get outside of Sudan. So my name is being redlined. So the name being redlined in the country, it means you can't get any document anymore in this country. And you are not allowed to get outside. So it's been very crazy and been very hard to get the document, to get outside of Sudan. At the same time, I've been very tortured. The time it was in jail, including your finger get out. They put it chemical in my hair. I lose my hair, and many things. So, including you are not allowed to see your family member. You are not allowed to see any lawyers. You are not allowed to see anyone. So that was very complicated. And I've been lucky to be released because of many people did great job, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and the UN and the United States people here and activists. So I've been lucky to be released. The time I was I released, my dad, that's always, I just thank you, my dad and my parents. The time I've been get through a lot of challenges and difficult, and I'm saying I've been tired to speak up about the human right. I'm tired to be a freedom activist. So my mom always said, look, freedom is always expensive, so you have to pay the price. If you are not ready, we have to go back so the Janjaweed militia can kill us all. Then no way, so just I have to keep doing, even putting my life risk, I just have to keep doing. So my dad it was so great. My dad helped to board and legally document to get to Egypt to get the treatment that I've been tortured. And the time I was in Egypt, I've been selected as one of the 100 women across the globe to be selected as one of the 10 of the international women of courage. And I've been lucky to be selected one of those 10 women. And I came to United States here to receive the International Women Award. And I've been lucky to be here. The time I was here, the government of Sudan started and threat my family member and telling them how I was a spy with the U.S. and a spy with the world. And this lady, she is very dangerous to Islam. And so it's been very hard for me to go anywhere again. So nowhere, at least I have to apply for asylum. And so I could survive, and my family at least could be survived. And I applied for asylum for last 3 years. I've been lucky to get survive here and get grant of asylum. And soon I'm going to receive my citizenship. So that was so great. I just always said the people of the United States saved my life. So, and it's still home back there as our people and our family members. So do something so we could also save the other people's life. That is really need to be life too. So I'm here also today to ask all of you as a human rights activists and the human rights advocate people and the people who believe peace and justice and freedom, and to speak up. So together we can write a message to our Congress, to the President and the U.S. administration, to the Department of State about the situation in Sudan, protect civilians. The government of Sudan and especially the president of Sudan, who wanted the International Criminal Court, is still free. That's why he continued to commit all these crimes. So those people and perpetrators who commit those crimes should be sent to be accountable to ICC, to International Criminal Court. And the other things also, the people is still suffering because there is no food. The government of Sudan should allow the humanitarian worker to enter Sudan, at least to provide food and medical care to the people who need it in the camps. And my final things also, peace is the human right, fundamental value. So there is no peace in Sudan, and Sudan should have peace. And that's of the things also we together could write something to people in the United States, and together we could speak up. This should end. The genocide should end. The history of never again everywhere. When I went to 17 states across the country to speak to many churches, to speak to many high school students, many colleges, many universities, they all were saying the history of never again. And I'm saying, what does it mean? It's still happening again and again and again. And never again is still happening. So what we should do, this should not again come and again and again and again. That should have end. So I am here, we are here all together and asking all of you as family, the human rights family, so to support the cause in Sudan and support the freedoms and the human rights in Sudan. And this all cries should stop. And I think if you have any questions, and sometimes people say, "How you are talking too much and you don't have any people," say, because I gone through all that, and sometimes I feel like, oh, I could speak like 2 days, non-stop, but I'm saying, no, give chance to others too. So, but that's happening. Wouldn't believe that is everywhere, but yeah.